Time for Twins Pod. It's gonna be a damn good show. Yeah. Hey, that airplane. What do you think happened to it?
Yeah, so I think that what really happened to this plane was there was a fire. When that plane went dark, there was a fire. And so when I started researching the plane, I find out there's like 20 witnesses that corroborate a fire event. And it turns out there's almost 500 pounds of lithium-ion batteries in the forward cargo bay, right next to the electronics bay, which is like the worst spot. You don't want to have them. And there was another incident called UPS Flight 6 just a couple years earlier. It was a cargo plane with lithium-ion batteries, and it burnt up in a very similar scenario with the lithium-ion batteries destroying the circuitry.
Oh, so that's why when I checked in my baggage, do you have any ion
That
batteries?
is why. That is literally why. In fact, if you mail a letter, just a piece of paper, that goes, is there any lithium-ion batteries in there? You're like, what do you mean is there lithium-ion batteries? It's a letter, dude. But they're so afraid of that because they especially, I talked to this guy, Billy Vincent. He was a former security director for the FAA. The reason why I talked to him is because I was Googling all the old articles about the plane, and he had speculated the lithium-ion battery fire scenario before the batteries were even known. Malaysian Airlines lied for 2 weeks. They said there was nothing dangerous in the cargo. And then on March 20th, after they had already invented this story of the plane going down in the South Indian Ocean, they go, oh yeah, there's 500 pounds of lithium-ion batteries. They didn't get scanned a couple times, and they were right in the wrong spot. And you're like, wait, you didn't tell us that? You didn't think that might be important information? So I talked to Billy Vincent. He was the one that told me about UPS Flight 6. So I'm like, dude, how did you know that this was a fire event without the witnesses, without knowing the batteries? And he's like, well, in UPS Flight 6, like the pilots didn't even have time to get their hoods on. In fact, the captain passed out before he could even get his hood on because just one inhalation of the smoke and you're out. That's how dangerous lithium-ion battery smoke is and fires are. And so what ended up happening is the co-pilot tried to land the plane, but he couldn't see because the smoke was blocking the window. So he couldn't even see out. And so the plane ends up crashing after they tried to land somewhere and they couldn't land. And I go, holy shit, that's the answer here. Like this guy, Mike McKay, is on an oil rig. He sees the plane on fire for 5 to 10 seconds or 10 to 15 seconds in this location where the plane disappeared initially. And you go, okay, that's when the fire started. It damaged the equipment. That's why the plane goes dark. It's not the guy like turning off all the capabilities of the plane, right? And what do? They turn around immediately. In fact, people looked at the radar plots of the turn back and they realized it was not under autopilot. It was a manual control. So guy takes control of the plane, turns it back. Where does he go? He goes to the closest airport to land a Boeing 777, Penang. And it's like 20 minutes away. You realize you have to land. It takes a while when you land in your plane. And he's going there. It's got the longest runway that you would need there. He doesn't go back to Kuala Lumpur because there's these huge mountain ranges. So, and it's a little bit further as well. And in this situation with the fire, you need to depressurize the plane to get air into the plane so that people aren't going to die from the smoke. And when you do that, you have to fly low. And it turns out they showed that the plane did do an emergency descent maneuver when it turned back. In fact, that's where our next set of witnesses, a bunch of fishermen that are off the coast of Thailand and Malaysia, and they see this plane flying unusually low. And you go, well, that's why they're doing it, because he's trying to get oxygen into the plane for the people to be able to breathe. And he doesn't want to fly too low because he doesn't want to hit the mountains as well. So it's pitch black outside. And if he doesn't have any lights, like now this is really dangerous. So they get to Penang and they don't land. And we know they were flying low at Penang because the co-pilot's cell phone pings a cell tower right there. And so now you wonder, oh, maybe they couldn't land because it's dark. They've got smoke. They potentially can't see. They've got no lights. And this is the part where I speculate we had communication with the plane. A lot of people will say, well, why did they not give out a Mayday call? Turns out they did. It seems like what happened was all of the communications up until the plane or after the plane went dark have all been classified, just not mentioned. You have to ask yourself, why did the Malaysian government not send up jets to track this plane, even though they were tracking it? You know, and it's because, well, they knew it was an emergency event. They knew it wasn't a hijacking. They knew it wasn't a suicidal pilot. The only way you could know that is if you had communication with the plane, that you were talking to the pilot and you knew that this was some type of emergency event. So then the question is, okay, well, why are they flying out to the Nicobar Islands? Because then they make a deviation, a turn after Penang. And if you look at the pilot manual for what you're supposed to do, one of the next things is land in the ocean, you know. But the problem here is, are you going to try to pull a Sully Sullenberger off? Like that was a miracle for him, and that was on the Hudson River. This is not a giant ocean, you know. So you imagine that probably what occurred at this point was there was some kind of, okay, this is where we're going to have a rendezvous point set up with you. We're going to bring our assets there so that when you land in the ocean and plane rips to shreds, we'll fish you out of the ocean or whatever we need to do. And this is where our final witness comes into play, Catherine T. Catherine T has one of the best recorded witness sightings of this plane. She was on a boat in the Nicobar Islands, basically at the same location where they claim this plane turned in the South Indian Ocean. Mm-hmm. Everybody has ignored her very detailed, elaborate sighting because it completely contraindicates those satellite pings. Mm-hmm. She sees this plane flying low, unusually low, descending, just like we saw in that video there. Mm-hmm. She sees it glowing orange, which is consistent with the fire suppression devices releasing bromine when it's trying to put out this fire, which is it's a halogen gas, like a orange halogen lamp. Mm-hmm. And she sees dark smoke coming out of the back of the plane. And you're just looking at her sighting, like she didn't make this sighting up. In fact, she still sticks to it like 10 years later. I talked to her in October. I got in touch with her last year. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, hey, can you just tell me what your story is? And it matched up with everything she said. The thing that creeped me out the most is I go, what time do you think you saw the plane? And she goes, well, I think it was around 1840 UTC, which was the time that plane was right there in the Nicobar Islands that I estimate that's what we're looking at in those videos, or within like 5 to 10 minutes. Mm-hmm. And she says, I felt pressured by the other investigators to change my time of my sighting. And I'm like, whoa, that is really, really creepy, because for these other people's story to make sense for the plane to go South Indian Ocean, like her sighting can't have happened, but she is in the flight path of the plane. Right. And the Mayday call, China Times only reported Mayday call. They claim to have intercepted a communication from the Taipei embassy from the United States Navy of MH370, of the pilot saying that the plane was disintegrating and attempting an emergency landing. The timing of that, 2:43 a.m., which is 1843 UTC. That's within 5 minutes of Catherine T's sighting. And I'm just going, okay, guys, we've got a video with coordinates in it that's showing a plane on fire with smoke coming out of the back of it. Mm-hmm. We've got a real witness in that location within like 100 miles of those coordinates who saw the plane. And I've got a China Times reported, news thing that was published the next day, not like weeks later or anything like this, saying, hey, this is the exact type of event that we've got going on. And it doesn't get reported on in any Western media at all, which makes me think about that Vladimir Putin, Tucker Carlson interview, where he asked him, like, why didn't you try to win a propaganda battle about the Nord Stream pipeline? Because we know the United States and allies took out that pipeline. And he goes, well, it's not, basically says that there's not a cost-benefit analysis to going to a propaganda war with the United States, because we have the best propaganda apparatus and we control all the Western media. Right. Mm-hmm. This is why when people ask me, like, why don't you think that it was China or Russia that took the plane? And I go, because they ain't covering this up. Like, only the United States has the capability to, like, silence these countries, put pressure on Malaysia to lie, what have you, and to have all our Western media be like, yeah, sure, planes just disappear in 2014 with all our satellites and crash into the ocean without leaving debris fields. Like, that's totally normal. Totally normal. Oh, and phones ring too, by the way, when they're at the bottom of the ocean. They had this expert go on all the mainstream media and be like, yeah, phones can totally ring when they're off and submerged under the bottom of the ocean. And I'm just going, like, if I call you right now and you have your phone off, that ain't going to ring at all, right? Like, it's crazy, that amount of propaganda and brainwashing that we are capable of absorbing when we just want to try to invent some rational explanation for something.
Yeah, any one of those videos, is there any evidence in those videos? I didn't notice if there was like a fire.
Yeah, so the smoke coming out of the back of the plane and then the belly. So I talked to some
infrared
experts.
Video.
The infrared one's the big one, because you see this heat signature in the belly, and it's not the other engine on the further side. And you can see this red, very red, which means it's almost as hot as the engine coming out of that. And some people say, oh, well, no, you see two lines, so it should be from the engines. But when you look at it close up, you can tell that the smoke line is not in alignment with the engine at all. So what's happening is there's two AC heat exhaust ports near the landing gear on either side. And so what's happening is, if this fires in the forward cargo bay, the smoke is billowing through the air conditioning system. And then it's being fed out through the AC exhaust ports. And then it's wrapping around both sides of the plane.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, so right there. So if you look at where the smoke is, it's displaced a little bit higher than where the engine is at right there. And this is where you can realize that, oh, crap, that's not the engine's on fire. Like, that's coming from inside the plane right there.
The cargo where there's had the batteries sitting.
Exactly, and the batteries are sitting right there as well. So That's this right here is like, how did anyone fake this? This is so much detail, and in thermal infrared, there's no such thing as hoax videos of military assets filming stuff in infrared thermal. Like, people just don't know anything about all that stuff, especially not in 2014. Heck, in 2014, I don't know how many people even realized we were filming in infrared at all. Like, that wasn't until those other UFO videos by the Navy were declassified in like 2018 when the New York Times ran that article. That was the first time I even knew that we're filming it in FLIR or whatever, forward-looking infrared. Before then, I just assumed we're doing like optical visual stuff.
So you think our military was using this technology, and maybe that's what started the fire? When it was trying to,
or maybe tried to cover up the fire.
So that's interesting. Is remember what just happened a couple of weeks ago with the Hamas and those
the pages.
batteries, the pagers, but it wasn't just the pager. Remember the next day, everything was blowing up. Like you can overload these batteries really easily. We just found out. And what I tell people too is like these videos are real, and everything that comes out between now and any time in the future is going to continue to corroborate them being real. I think the whole thing was a covert event. I think that this was 6th generation warfare against China. The question you have to ask is who was on that plane? And the people that were on that plane were 20 Freescale semiconductor engineers. That's way too many people from one company. It's an American company. 8 of them are Chinese nationals and 12 are Malaysian nationals. They had just come out with a microchip smaller than the dimple in a golf ball. We're talking almost like microscopic size stuff.
And the people responsible for that was on this flight.
Yeah, 20 of them. And that company was connected to U.S. Aerospace and Defense. In fact, we found a 2005 National Security Agency report, which was called Superconducting Security Assessment. It was about looking into superconductivity is like the next generation of microchips where you have zero resistance. And this is where magical effects can begin to happen, including macroscopic quantum effects, which is kind of the bridge between a wormhole and quantum teleportation. And this company is listed in this report 9 different times. Like half of it's like basically about their microchips. And so you're going, okay, now I see what's going on here. Like China these people aren't going to China for a training exercise or something, right? These people are going there and China has some leverage over them or something. And
trying to steal it.
Trying to steal the technology. I mean, if you've got that technology, you control the planet.
Right.
If I was China, I'd try to steal that technology too. Like that is some advanced stuff for whoever has that. Like this is beyond, air supremacy. This is just supremacy of space.
Of the universe.
Of the universe. And this is like, why did Trump start Space Force too? Isn't that kind of weird that Trump started Space Force and we don't really know why?
That's like Space Force.
Yeah, like Space Force. Why are we doing that?
You talking about like Mars and shit? Like,
well, if we have this kind of technology, so I think that what happened here is this is 6th generation warfare, which is warfare over technology and manipulate. Actually, if you were to like ask Grok or something, it's going to say like space and time, warfare, like next generation warfare, and that we started that fire. We could have either planted the batteries on there, or we could maybe have just ignited them remotely. And then why? Because you're diverting the plane. You don't want China to see you don't want China to see those videos. You want China to just have like low resolution video or like imagery of it. So they're wondering what the hell did they just do to this plane? Especially if we knew that was about to go down, or if and we knew, and then we set up this trap for them. Now the plane's on fire. It's flying away from China, away from all their detection systems, away from their radars, away from all their surveillance, and we get it far enough away, and then we warp that thing right out of nowhere, And then China, what the hell is China going to say? Is China going to go, oh yes, the United States, just teleported a plane away. Like we're going to have all, and MSNBC, Rachel Maddow's going to go, this has all the hallmarks of a Chinese disinformation operation. Nothing's going to happen, right? So this is the part where, I think that the United States ran this covert operation. I think it was well planned out ahead of time. I think the batteries were part of this operation for sure. And weirdly, China hacks the Malaysian government the next day. There's so much sketchy shit about this situation.
Really?
Like March 9th, China hacks the Malaysian government with this sophisticated social engineering hack. They send this PDF that's like, debris found in the ocean, click here. And their people in their transport ministry click there. And then they have full access to their databases. And you know what they steal? They steal the crisis meeting minute notes about the plane and classified information about the plane. You can find the news article. It literally says, stole classified information about the plane. You're going, what's classified? Is it the communications that I was just talking about that were stolen? Because they're trying to figure out what's going on, what happened to this plane. And then 5 days later, around the same time that the United States intelligence sources leaked to the media that the plane went into the South Indian Ocean, China, all of a sudden, this satellite image appears on the internet, and it gets reported on as debris in the South China Sea. And they go look, they find nothing. I went back and looked at that imagery. It looks like 3 orbs around a craft that's in the middle of the air, but it's like from much further away and it's lower resolution. And you're going, holy shit. I'm the only person on the planet, as far as I know, that speculated that was a message to like our intelligence agencies to be like, oh, we saw what you did. Like, we don't have enough evidence, but we know you did something to this. And then you can now see where these videos get thrown on the internet. And now the U.S. government's freaking out because they didn't want China and Russia to see all that. They just wanted them to be like, what the hell happened? And that's why you would find out about, that Citrix session. There's logs for that. And that's how I knew right away whoever did this got caught. Like, they got caught. They probably got caught right away. After this footage shows up on the internet, somebody sees it. They find out who that did that. Now they're going, you are a spy. You just released all this information to our enemies. Because if I can reverse engineer that, I'm a healthcare IT dude, works in medical records, and I can figure all that out from going through the history of the physics and all this stuff and find these guys like Hal Puthoff and all these other dudes. Like, China and Russia definitely figured it out. You could even argue the reason why I haven't been disappeared or silenced or talked to is because they already know China and Russia figured it out. And they're going, well, you can't do that much more damage at this point, right?
Right.
And if they make me disappear, then it's like, okay, well, now there's going to be this Streisand effect where it becomes this mythology about the plane, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Is there any chance that the people that was on this flight, are they alive or?
A lot of people ask me that, and I like to tell people, like, first I want to give my condolences to the family. What I'd like to say to them, if I could tell them something, is like, I'm very sorry for, and I'll even look at the camera, I'm very sorry for what the United States government did to your family members, because it's horrific when you think about it. You could argue that it's a war crime to do something like that.
We dropped a couple of nukes on Japan.
It's not our first time committing a war crime, that's for sure, right? And we had to hide it because of the implications that we talked about before. Because the implications of bringing down the whole global economic system, the potential dangers of the planet ending. You can see it from that perspective. I think that the smoke from the fire, probably a lot of people succumb to it. And the reason is that there's an hour and 20 minutes between the plane going dark and the videos, the time and the location of the videos that we see. The masks on the airplanes only last like 15 or 20 minutes. For the record, guys, if you're on an airplane, don't depend on those masks unless you get into the ground right away, because they don't last that long. The ones in the cabin in the pilot in the cockpit last a lot longer, but the ones for the passengers don't last at all. So I imagine the people would have passed out pretty quickly and then just never woke up. And I honestly hope that's the case, because you can definitely survive that type of macroscopic phase conjugation wormhole event that we see. And if they did fly to Diego Garcia, which is where I think they showed up, based on a bunch of witness sightings on some islands around there, then the only other thing is like either go into witness protection or something like that, become wards of the state, or like, as my buddy Dave would say, is like they give you some water bottle and then you drink it and you don't wake up again. And I hope we're not that evil. I mean, I hope it was more of like we set the plane on fire and accidentally, killed a bunch of people. So,
hey man, I don't feel so good, man.
What's wrong with you?
I'm embarrassed to tell you. I'm just gonna tell you, I ain't took a shit in like 2 weeks, man.
Ain't you taking your OH? Your optimal human?
I thought we ran out of it.
Man, here, take this. Here's some right here. Take it. Get it up in you. Drink that. Get that probiotics. That artichoke.
That is good.
That apple powder. All those essential nutrients that get your intestines right. Yeah, get them intestines right. Get it all up in you. Swallow it. There you go. Why are you drinking it like it's Kool-Aid or something? Just
well, you made it with cold water. I'm over here getting brain freeze.
What's good with cold water? It's like a smoothie.
Oh man, I feel something move. Oh man.
Go to optimalhuman.com/Hodgetwins and now try Optimal Human for free today.